On May 31st, Idaho Department of Water Resources Director Matthew Weaver issued a curtailment order for 6 groundwater districts. Is that a big deal?
It's estimated that about 500,000 acres are subject to curtailment, which is half of all the groundwater acres in the eastern Snake River Plain. So for many reasons, that's a very big deal.
Good morning, friends. Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on Yanasa TV. So today I wanted to talk about what's going on in Idaho, because some of you have probably heard about this, but the state of Idaho has put a water curtailment order, which is basically a water shutoff order on literally 500,000 acres of farmland. That's a lot of potatoes. A lot of these farmers, this impacts about 6,400 water users, but a lot of these farmers that are farming this land have already invested thousands of acres, thousands of dollars per acre to grow potatoes.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Trevor Belknap. I operate a family farm, fifth generation family farm in the Snake River Valley of eastern Idaho. And I just wanted to visit with you for a minute about the impacts of the water curtailment order that's been issued by Director Weaver from the Idaho Department of Water Resources. The situation in which we find ourselves is about as bad as it gets. Not only will we be out of business, many other businesses will be highly impacted, and you, as my friends and neighbors, will also be impacted because we're so interconnected. If the ag economy in eastern Idaho fails, which it surely will if this curtailment order is in place, it can remain in place, will dry up and blow away, just like it did back in the Dust Bowl of the 30s. Banks will fail. Equipment dealers, car dealers, gas stations, grocery stores, all rely on the ag economy that's here in eastern Idaho. The children in our schools, how many of them belong to families who work in some form of ag industry in eastern Idaho? It's horrible, and we need to fix it. And I would propose to you that it is not a water problem, it's a management problem, because we have water. Reservoirs are full, the mountains are covered in snow, the river's been flowing well. So why now? Why, after we've planted our crops, we have crops in the ground that are already growing, now in the middle of June, they pull a curtailment order to say, you must cease pumping water. The cost is huge. An acre of potatoes costs upward of $4,000 an acre to grow. How will that ever be recovered? They will not grow without water. And what will that do to everyone else that's reliant upon us in this area and the state of Idaho? What will the counties do for roads and bridges, police departments, ambulances, hospitals that rely on the tax base? Property like this will become worthless. Without water, the land doesn't have any value here. What will they do? We need to consider these things, and we need to talk to our elected officials. We need to call them now and push on them to find a workable solution, a compromise that will allow businesses like ours to continue to progress and grow and succeed in the Snake River Valley, and allow those in the southern part of the state to also continue to go. We need to work together to find a common solution, or we're all going to fail.
Right, so they've got all of this investment into their land, and then the government comes out in June and says, water curtailment, you cannot water your crops, you're done. So they're pretty much going to lose that entire investment in those crops. It would cost millions of dollars, and it's not just going to impact the farmers, it's going to impact the entire economy for the state of Idaho. So I wanted to explain what's going on there and what I think is going to happen, because it's in the best interest of the governor of Idaho to do all that he can to figure out a solution to this problem. He would face a lot of backlash if he did not solve this water curtailment issue. The curtailment was put into place because the current laws and the current regulations basically state that that's what has to happen. So I don't know if this is being brought up as an excuse to go in and rework some of those laws, or if this is happening because there's definitely a water shortage there. We'll discuss that in a second.
Burley attorney Kent Fletcher represents several surface water irrigation clients.
My clients don't want to see curtailment. I mean, it's devastating to a lot of people.
You've probably heard first in time, first in right. In Idaho, junior water rights holders can only get their water once the senior water rights users have theirs. Surface water users, like the Twin Falls Canal Company, in most cases have senior rights dating back to the early 1900s. Based on Department of Water Resources calculations, without curtailment, the Twin Falls Canal Company stood to suffer a shortfall of over 74,000 acre-feet this season.
That's about 12 days worth of water in the long run.
Jay Barlogi has been with the Twin Falls Canal Company since 1992. He says they rely on springs flowing from the Snake River Plain aquifer for about 80% of their water. And while reservoirs and storage systems are topped off from a good winter in southern Idaho, in similar years they've still had to reduce deliveries.
Our storage supply filled in 2021 and 2022. We reduced diversions down to ½ inch per acre in both of those years.
So half of the groundwater users in the Snake River Plain have been cut off from water. That to make up for a 74,000 acre foot shortage that goes into the surface water users. Now, the largest surface water rights user in this area just happens to be the Twin Falls Canal Company. The Twin Falls Canal Company is it's a 501c12, which is a nonprofit utility type of cooperative or corporation, and they control close to 250,000 acre feet of water rights, surface water rights. With that 250,000 acre feet of surface water rights, they service 4,000 customers and just about 202,000 acres, 203 if you round up slightly, so 203,000 acres. So basically what you have is, you have, and this is just one of the surface water rights holders, but they have 250,000 acre feet of water rights, okay? They service 4,000 customers, and they irrigate 203,000 acres. Because of that, they are shutting down close to 500,000 acres, from estimates that I've heard, 6,400 water users, over 74,000 acre feet of water, compared to that 250,000 acre feet of water. So I do think that there's definitely an imbalance of water usage, but when it gets into water rights, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I don't get into that stuff, but I do think that, the Twin Falls Canal Company, their water rights date back to 1909, some of the oldest water rights in the country. And I think that if you try and go in and disrupt those senior water rights holders, the impacts could fall all the way down the line. And I don't know, maybe Twin Falls is pushing this issue because they want to be able to charge people who aren't in their canal system for using water in the state. That could end up happening. That could be part of the solution, is that they sell them, 74,000 acre feet of water rights this year.
That's about 12 days worth of water in the long run.
So there are some outdated mitigation plans that would fall into place normally when there seems to be a shortage.
After 10 years of litigation, an agreement was reached between surface water districts and groundwater districts to follow mitigation plans that would ensure the senior water rights users would get their share. In response to the curtailment, an attorney representing groundwater users called the situation absurd, saying hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland and their associated economic benefits are thrown away during a wet year just to cause a small amount of additional water to overflow from the aquifer into the Snake River.
Really, all the groundwater districts needed to do was comply with the terms that they agreed to back in 2015.
Well, the goal of the mitigation plan that the groundwater district signed was to restore the aquifer and restore water supplies resulting from decades and decades of pumping so that we can get to a point where there isn't injury occurring to surface water users. And that's still our goal as a surface water community.
So according to Governor Little, yes, visually it looks like there's plenty of surface water, because there is. It looks like there's plenty of water in Idaho, which many people would argue that there is. He's saying that basically the eastern Snake Plain aquifer is drying up, and that aquifer is what feeds the surface water. So in order to protect surface water right holders, they have to protect that aquifer, and if the aquifer's levels are getting too low, then they have to curtail to save the aquifer. And that's basically, that's what the government's always been there for us, is to protect us from things that we can't see. Under a 2009 mitigation plan, basically, if there is a shortfall of water, in order for water rights, groundwater rights holders to be able to utilize the water, they would have to show that they have a storage plan to offset their water usage. The problem that we have right now is that a lot of these farmers are saying that they have sent documents to the state saying that they have enough offset to mitigate their proportional share of that process. The state is saying, no, it's not just your proportional share, it's the entire thing. So anyway, I don't know how they go about calculating all of these water shortages, but my guess is that this is going to be an ongoing issue for these farmers unless they work out a long-term solution in a modern day to mitigate and properly use those water resources. Like I said, I'm not necessarily in favor of changing senior water right holders' rights, because those are rights that have been put in place. They've been protected by law. It wouldn't be fair necessarily to take them from them, but at the same time, you have a company that is irrigating half the land of what is being shut down to protect their water rights. I do think that there's a lot of issues with our aquifers across the country in general. I sincerely believe that a lot of that can be mitigated correctly by implementing more regenerative range management practices. So bringing cows back onto the land, doing things that will help the land be able to soak up the water and replenish those aquifers. I mean, that's really what is happening is we're pumping it up to the surface. It's running off because we're not properly taking care of our soil. And there's nothing against the big farmers out there. It's just, we have to do something to be able to, maybe there could be some studies done that could say, okay, well, in these particular areas, if we flip from cropland to rangeland, we can replenish our aquifers by X amount each year. There must be some sort of longer term solution to that other shutting people down from operating their businesses and doing so. The biggest challenge I see with all of this is that they're doing it at a time when farmers have already put their inputs into the land. So it would literally bankrupt these farmers to shut them down at this point in the season. They may have been able to take a hit had they known before they put all those inputs into the farmland. So this is going to be an interesting story to see how it turns out, to see how it develops. But like I said, I think in this particular case, it's in the governor's best interest to find an immediate solution for this year, and then work with the Water Resources Department, and maybe even the state legislature to come up with laws and how to properly mitigate this problem in the future, so that we're not giving farmers heart attacks by coming out with curtailments and cutting them off. And if it comes down to laws being put in place with giving them the ability to protect their rights, and they're the ones who ultimately are shutting down these farmers, then that's something to consider as well. This is a 501c12 corporation that has been given the power to basically shut down other farmers. It's a very complicated situation. But like I said, I think it's in the governor's best interest and the state legislator's best interest to find a solution, and to find a solution quickly. They really don't have much time because the crops are in the ground. Because the crops are in the ground, they have to be watered. And if they're not watered, they're going to die. So this is something that is really urgent for them to come up with a solution on within the next week. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned.